Coming to you live from CBT Studios in the heart of Roseville, California. I'm your host, Matt, and joined with me as always is my co-host,
Roger.
And this is the Cryptid vs. Cryptid podcast. Let's get right into some abductions.
It's finally time.
And here we are, back with episode 3 of Cryptids vs. Conspiracies.
And time to talk about arguably the biggest conspiracy that isn't even a conspiracy at this point.
Basically should be fact, but you know. Yeah, we're talking about some alien abductions, taking our first deep dive into the realm of aliens.
What a fucking wormhole that is.
And just to preface, there's a lot to cover, so get your popcorn, get your drink. We're going to be here for a bit. We'll try and stay on the path of alien abductions, but it might dwindle into just other alien stuff in general.
Whenever you deal with aliens, you're always going to go into theories and stuff, so we're probably going to be talking about some other stuff that can lead into different episodes, but we won't try and go into a whole hour rant with it.
Yeah, if we talk about something that's not abductions, we'll keep it short, but keep in mind we will probably take that on to another episode of Cryptids versus Conspiracies where we can go more into detail.
Honestly, just aliens in general can be like their own episode each.
Now, before we hop into anything, like always, thanks for returning. It's our second episode back. We're staying strong. The new news series was supposed to be coming out on Monday. It's on the back burner right now. Life happened, so we don't have the time to get to it right now. And it'll also be a pilot, so it's not going to be one for one what it'll be in the future, but it'll be good. Get to recording that this week sometime. And thanks for the support. This has easily become our most popular series. Skinwalker Ranch at 218 downloads and Palmyra Wolves at 276. So obviously people want to listen to Cryptids versus Conspiracies.
I'm still surprised that... Is that the highest one now?
No, not even close.
But I'm still surprised Palmyra Wolves is the highest out of the two right now.
Yeah, you know, it's a niche topic. There's only so many places you can get information on it from, so everybody's running to come listen to us.
Let's go.
It's like when we did the creepypasta one, and
that
those people took
up
a clip out of our episode and used it for their thing, and then the episode just got really big, and it was in the top for a long time, and I hated it. But it's not there anymore.
Alright, well, how are we starting this? We're going to give a little background about aliens first?
Yeah, we'll establish our basic knowledge on aliens and the whole discussion and things, just for a little background information before we jump into the fray.
Alright, going into it, there's a lot of type of aliens. When you go through stories, you're going to hear different reports of different aliens. The big three that I know of, the Greys, obviously, the most popular one.
Also, the Greys can vary. Honestly, the Greys are a whole podcast episode, but I will say there are two main types of Greys. You got the tall Greys, and you got the small Greys.
Yeah.
A lot of people view the tall Greys as the sentient ones, and a lot of people theorize that the small Greys, they're servant robots that go out to do their dirty work.
Either way, most popular ones, you're always going to find these ones as like the poster child of any alien.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go to some random Joe on the street and you say, what do you think an alien looks like? Boom, you get the small gray.
Oh yeah. Second one, the reptilians, thought to be maybe possibly our government.
Justin Bieber is a reptilian confirmed. Obama is a reptilian confirmed.
Biggest out of the world theory, but it's still a theory.
Once again, another whole podcast episode right there on the reptilian and the reptilian agenda.
But there's those. And then the third one, which isn't as popular as the two, but it's still there, the Nordics.
Definitely not as popular mainstream, but you see it a lot when you go through alien sightings and alien abductions. I think it's probably, I would say, the second most popular when it comes to alien abductions is Nordics.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, obviously the Greys are probably the most popular.
Number one, easily.
But Nordics are definitely, and then you hear some reptilians, but not much.
And then the rest of them can fuck off. They're not important enough to be on the top 3 list.
I tried to get into more of them, but it's such a big wormhole, and
Yeah, and there's just not as many stories for a lot of the other races as compared to Greys, Reptilians, and Nordics.
And we're also going over some of the most believable stories out of them all. So,
well, you are. I'm going for some of the more risque alien abduction stories. Yeah. Should have saved these for a Valentine's Day alien episode.
All right.
No, we got Bigfoot sex stuff planned for Valentine's Day special. I got some stories I've been putting in my back pocket.
Oh, God. I can't wait for that one.
You won't even see it coming.
All right. Now, before we start into alien abductions, I just want to bring up the most popular, or well, not most popular, but the very, first alien sighting, kind of.
Very first, or...
one of the first known.
I would say...
Back in 1878.
Yeah.
So...
This is... I would say by far this is the most common, most popular alien abduction.
Well, this I don't even think was an alien abduction. This was just the first
never mind.
sight.
You said 18. I think you said 19.
No, yeah. So it's January 2nd, 1878. A Texas farmer by the name of John Martin, kind of looking out in the stars, and he sees this big beam of light crash down onto his property. And when he goes to look at it, it's a saucer of some sorts crashed into the ground. And 3 tall figures pull out. This is the first, sighting out of anything to do it. And so it's kind of thought of to be, kind of out of this because no one's ever brought anything up like this.
Yeah.
It's 1878. No one's thinking aliens right off the bat, so...
This is like the aliens equivalent to the prospectors seeing Bigfoot back in the early 1900s.
Yeah. So that's where basically almost everything started from there. And from there, it just blew up.
And then you're talking about probably the biggest first sighting. The first abduction that's really recorded, it's the first one, but it is by far not the most popular one, would have to be the Antonio Vilas Boas case. This abduction occurred in 1957. It happened to, obviously, Antonio. He was also a farmer tending to his field late at night, trying to avoid the heat, when he saw a craft coming. I believe it was just a red glowing light he saw it, and it kept getting closer. And so what do you do when you see a big red glowing light coming towards you? You try and run away.
You hop in your tractor and you drive off.
And then something we'll see a lot as we cover more alien cases going forward. He's trying to get away from the tractor, stops working. Now, I could go on and on about theories as to why this happens, why vehicles and other devices shut down when an alien is approaching. Too much science, too many words. We're not talking about it today.
We're not science nerds. We're just here to explain the unknown.
I got some theories dealing with gravitational force and electricity in the air, but,
electromagnetic waves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now's not the time, though. So he tries to get away on his tractor. UFO lands in his field. What pops out? Aliens. And I'm not going to talk about it now, but... when it comes to credibility, this is something that's always caught my eye. These aliens were wearing gray coveralls.
Gray coveralls?
Gray coveralls. Now you're like, that's weird. Never heard that one before, probably. This has popped up in 2 other cases that I know of, where they're just wearing gray coveralls, and that is how it is described. Word for word, everybody's saying, maybe not gray coveralls specifically, but they're wearing coveralls, which is weird. Just keep it in mind as we go further into the future.
Now, should that not be, mistaken for, a suit? Some type of, astronaut suit? They just didn't see the sleeves
I don't think it's, a full astronaut suit, but there's a lot of reports of gray suits. And enough to the point where they can differentiate that it's not skin, that it's a suit.
Because that's another thing with aliens, is that they always are wearing suits.
Yeah.
So, they have the look of the Greys, and then they also have the suits on top of it. Fallout, Destroy All Humans, Tides from Mars, anything. So, they're all wearing suits.
And there's another case, I heard it on another podcast, and I'm going to give it credit, alien theorists theorizing, super big, but they talked about a case, very briefly, about aliens wearing gray coveralls or gray suits dancing in the middle of the street.
Dancing in the middle of the street.
Break dancing in the middle of the street. This guy was driving by and saw it. But that's nothing to do with the
Did they get a number 1 victory royale or something, and they were just hitting the
They're
gritty?
about to get down, bro.
God.
So, moving on. They also had blue eyes, small blue eyes, which was a little weird.
They all change in eyes. I've heard red, I've heard green, I've heard blue.
And then you have the typical big black eyes and
Yeah.
stuff. And then lastly, describe them, they were 5 feet tall. And then, I didn't write it down, but he does go on the ship. Do you know exactly how that happens?
I think he just stopped. He just kind of blacked out, as some of them do whenever they get abducted. It's either that or they get carried up in the beam of light.
And we're going to talk about specifics of alien abductions after we cover a couple stories. So I'm going to skip all that boring shit. Obviously, the basic sample taking stuff happens to him, whatever. Who cares? The main draw of this story is when this female hybrid alien walks in.
He gets down with a female alien.
Oh yeah, he does. He describes it like she's got red fucking pubic hair. He was paying attention, bro. He knew all the details. My room was getting a little warm when I was reading this case, if you know what I mean. So, basically, they start doing their thing, you know, they're getting it on. He's like, yeah, I was going at it for like fucking 30 minutes with this alien babe. I got a little side note here. After they finish, she rubs her belly, points up. Basically, he believes that's the alien saying she's gonna raise the baby in outer space. But then she has to hit my boy with the... She looked unhappy, or she looked very happy that it was finally over. Like, she was like, oh, thank God it's done. And he didn't take this well. He got really angry. Doesn't say that he did anything crazy, but he was pretty upset when she was like, man, what a weakling. After that, the aliens gave him a tour of the ship, showing him all the stuff. He tried to take what he described as like this clock-looking object, but they didn't let him take it, and then they dropped him off at home.
Okay, so he's like different from any other case where he remembered stuff. Because usually a lot of them just don't remember anything.
Yeah.
And they don't really let them tour around. Like,
Yeah.
they remember getting carried sometimes and seeing it, but they don't really get toured around with it.
There's a lot of cases. Well, I don't want to say a lot. There are cases where they do get tours like this, and like another we'll cover. But yeah, a lot of the times they don't remember anything. They don't usually get tours. They just get picked up. Shit gets happening, and then they get dropped off. But that's basically what happens. That's the whole main shtick. Basically, it's not only our first reported abduction, it's our first report of alien-human intercourse.
Yeah, that's how it all started. Here we are. Now everyone theorizes that aliens are just trying to take over and put human hybrids in here.
There's a lot of theories that go into why the aliens have us helping them with offspring. Once again, that's like a whole nother podcast episode. But
like anything we talk about here can be a whole podcast episode.
Yeah.
So, do we move on to the second one?
Yeah, I say we tell another story and then we get into the graphic details of alien abductions.
Okay. The second one I know of that's like closer to Antonio is Betty and Barney Hill. Now, this is a very big one.
I would say arguably the most popular alien abduction story by far.
So, Betty and Barney Hill are returning from a holiday in Niagara Falls, and they're just kind of driving, and they see this flying saucer just coming towards them. And they stop, and it just kind of stops with them as they stop. And so Barney gets out with his binoculars and a 12 gauge because he's just packing. He's just packing a 12 gauge. It's 1961 in America. What do you expect?
And he's savage like that. He's like, no alien gonna be fucking with me and my chick.
So obviously he's looking through. He sees 6 slender figures looking through the glass, and then I think after that they kind of go into a hypnotic state, right?
Yeah, they don't really remember anything at this point besides knowing that they had seen some aliens. I believe they just wake up in their car. It's hours later, and then they just go home.
They don't remember anything?
Not right away.
Yeah, okay.
Besides the fact that they saw aliens, were chasing them, they had seen some figures, I think all they remember after that is that they wake up in their car and they head home.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of history for this. I'm going to try and not mention this anymore because you guys have heard us reiterate it 10 times. I would say this one's another... We could go into far more detail on just a separate episode. So If you are interested in the case, there's a lot more details you can look up. Go research it for yourself. If not, one day we may cover it down the road. But we're going to skip over some of the smaller details.
So, another thing with these alien abductions is that you'll see a lot of people have to go to like kind of a therapist type
Hypnotic regression.
Yeah. And so once they start doing that, Betty starts having dreams. And she starts explaining them. So at first, I think she explained them as gray figures. And then she started explaining them, I think, with blonde in noses. So they fit more of the Nordic
description.
Yeah. That's going on. And then the husband, Barney, starts talking about how they were taking her eggs and then they were taking his sperm. How they exactly take his sperm, I don't know.
I almost don't want to know.
I think he explained it to saying that they just took something and it just sucked it out, but he didn't have an orgasm. So whatever these aliens are doing, they literally figured out to just not have a sexual feeling with it. So that's cool. But yeah, so it just kind of sucked the semen out.
Thank you for that. Great explanation. Before we get any farther, I haven't played it for you, but I have heard the audio tape of him in the hypnotic regression session they were doing. And everybody listening, I'd say we play it, but I'm a little lazy and don't want to do that much editing. So I definitely implore you to go listen to it. It's just the fact, it's not like a video evidence of aliens or anything, but when you hear him recount this story, and depending on what you think of hypnotic regression, whether it's legit or just bogus, it's irrelevant, because when you hear him describe the story, you can feel the horror and the shock and the terror in his voice to the point where he starts crying while he's recounting the story. It's scary. A lot of shit doesn't scare me. That scared me, just hearing him recount his story. I definitely implore you to go look it up. It shouldn't be that hard to find. And I'll play it for you once we finish the episode, just so you can truly experience it, because it's something you do have to listen to when you research this topic.
It all just depends on the type of person that gets abducted and what they have to go through, because some of them obviously are going to be like that. Mm-hmm. Some of them are going to be able to tell the story kind of straight, but will be, they're telling the truth. And then some are just like, what the fuck are you even saying?
Well, and I especially don't blame him for being terrified, because back in the 60s, aliens were this niche topic. You didn't want to talk about it, and they were just viewed as this terrifying thing.
Well, yeah, so aliens, they really took off. Their first big explosion of sightings was for 1940s to 60s, because it's when the Roswell incident happens, and that one spans all the way to 78.
And there's a lot of big media about aliens coming out, and just these horrifying fiction books people are writing, and the public view is just, these are monsters that are out to get you. And something like this happens to you, you're going to be shitting bricks.
I think the total stories of abductions and sightings of UFOs and stuff is in the 330s for that time span. So
I believe the book War of the Worlds came out around this time. I'm doing some... Oh no, never mind. It came out long before this. It came out 1997. But it's basically this horror story about aliens and stuff. And so
I remember watching that as a kid, and that just made me even hate aliens more, because Signs wasn't a big help. But then War of the Worlds happened, and I don't like aliens.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind, in this household, the Benny and Barney Hill household, Betty's a big alien fan, just for a little context. So Barney is hearing all these alien stories, hearing about the books, whatever films are out. So it's not like he's like, what the fuck is going on? I have no clue what's going on. He knows what's going on in his experience. And that just amplifies the terror, because at the time, all the media about this was that these are horrifying creatures that are out to get you.
Yeah, no, this is definitely just a big story in general. The next story when we get into it is going to be another big one too for me.
Yeah, and before we end the Betty and Barney Hill discussion, there's one more big piece of evidence to bring up. Betty drew a star map. Now, when she was on the ship, the aliens had shown her a star map of where their home is and trade routes for aliens and all this other shit. And so, during her hypnotic regression, she was able to redraw the star map. And you think, oh, okay, big whoop, she drew some dots. Well, this was taken pretty seriously, and so people did research into trying to figure out if this star map is legit. And her star map is almost a perfect recreation of the Zeta Reticuli system, which is crazy because back then you couldn't just look up star maps.
Yeah.
This is 1960. You're not just doing that shit. And you're most likely not doing it on your free time, going and finding documents and papers and stuff about star systems, unless you're a scientist. And so to almost perfectly redraw the Zeta Reticuli system, it's crazy. There's something there. That's not just something you're going to recreate off memory perfectly. And then she does it almost perfectly, just off memory alone from something she was shown by aliens. What more proof could you need?
Yeah, no, that kind of like sets stuff in stone. I think these people weren't the ones that went to the military first. That's a whole different one.
I think we should talk about believability at the end, because I go back and forth on this case a lot, but the star map thing is something that really sets this case more towards believability for me.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that more at the end. Now, do you want to talk about another story, or do you want to go into some graphic detail about what happens during your alien abduction?
So there's not much to fully talk about with them. Multiple people have different stuff about them.
Before you get into some descriptions and stuff, I want all the listeners to close their eyes and really get into character and really feel like you're getting abducted and all this stuff that Roger's talking about is actually happening to you.
All right. So obviously the first story we talked about isn't it doesn't sound bad.
The worst thing, bang an alien. Imagine that. That's epic.
mean, hey, that's like a whole flex on someone. You're like,
Oh, yeah.
I literally fucked an entire different race from the humans.
I banged a redheaded alien, buddy. What you got?
They covered him in some like gooey slime, I think. That's what they said. Other than that, he doesn't have like a full like terrifying one. But so Betty and Barney Hill kind of had it the worst because they got the physical and the like sexual shit happen to them. And so obviously you're gonna get put under. You'll get a whole gas mask on you or something, and then they'll put you under and they're gonna cut you up. People have reports of having literally like slashes and everything from marks of them getting opened up and looked in and studied. And then there's obviously the probes, biggest with the grays. We may as well touch on it because you can't touch on aliens and grays without bringing this up. It's literally just them.
Now there are reports of the probes being triangle shaped. So while you have your eyes closed and you're imagining getting probed, just keep in mind, in older reports, most of the time it was a triangle shaped probe. So, you got 3 points of sharp contact. Just keep that in mind in your imaginary world.
I'm trying not to close my eyes and imagine that, so I don't have to. But anyways, obviously there's also what happened to Betty and Barney Hill. The whole taking of the sperm. It's like how Barney explains it, it's like a respirator type deal. And then kind of just like sucks it out. No orgasm, no nothing, it just sucks it out. So
it's almost like
I can't even imagine how that feels and how weird that is. So I'm just not going to.
I would describe it as almost like a catheter being pulled out.
Yeah. And then for women, there's also the eggs being taken, which you guys got easy compared to getting it sucked out of it, but still not very good.
No.
So that's basically everything that will happen. Some of them might take you on a tour. Some might just drop you off, and you'll be like a whole 5 weeks out from when you were taken. So it just depends. And then sometimes you'll be taken to some other places. I think someone got abducted in the UK, and then they got brought to Australia, I think. I might be getting the whole... It might have been only in Australia, but...
If that happened, those aliens are assholes. You know how hard it would be to get back home after something like that?
The whole point is that they don't put you back right where they found you. They kind of just put you wherever they want. So yeah, that's basically what happens. You get experimented on after either having a horrifying chase like fucking Antonio, or you're trying to protect your woman with a shotgun, and then they just like, hypnotic, you're done. You're not kidding us.
Or you get some of the scary ones where they come in your bedroom and they just take you.
Oh, yeah. So that's basically all of them, right?
Yeah, no. Another one that's kind of big is them putting, like, things inside of you.
I didn't, yeah. I forgot about that.
There's a lot of cases about that. Nothing's been taken out of somebody that has reported they've had something put inside of him, because you can't really go to a surgeon and be like, hey, cut me open to see if there's this thing inside of me that doesn't show up on x-ray or anything.
I mean, how are you going to touch something that's from an alien? I mean, they literally have reports of having way advanced technology compared to any of us. So, I mean, when the government came out in 2017 with their sightings, they explained the flying saucer as being something otherworldly that if we got invaded, there's nothing we could have done. So, how are you going to go to the surgeon and be like, take this unknown thing that's made of, like, memory metal and take it out of me, please?
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that's a majority of the experience you're going to get when you're abducted by aliens, if you can remember.
So now I want to talk about one of my biggest cases, because this one, when I heard about this one, this is what hit me hard about alien abductions. The Travis Walton experience.
I would say this is probably the second biggest UFO abduction story.
Alright. So Travis Walton's walking around with his buddies, right? And they're doing the job, they're driving home, I think, from their job.
Yeah, they were doing tree logging, I believe.
I don't remember what time it was, but I do know the time frame. It was in 1971. So
I believe
like 10 years after Barney and Betty. So they're driving down, and Travis is explained to be kind of like not aggressive, but he's more of like an explorer. Mm-hmm. He's gonna, if he sees something weird, he's gonna go after it. So they see the UFO. I don't remember if there was a light. I think it was a red light, blue light. I think actually it was blue light. So they see it. Travis literally gets out of the car and starts going after it. Everyone's trying to stop him, but he's going after it. And they get out of the car and they're looking at it, and Travis is under the thing, and he just gets, the blue beam comes down, and he's literally like kind of not Superman pose. What am I thinking of?
The Jesus pose?
Yes, the Jesus pose.
Yeah, he gets launched back, right?
Well, not even launched back. He gets like sucked up in the Jesus pose.
I thought he got hit by the beam, and it kind of like knocked him on his ass.
I think it knocked him. They might have hit him like kind of going at an
I'm not
angle.
saying like it hit him, but like at least the force of it hit him.
Well, yeah, no, but I think what happens is that the beam like obviously went on him, and it kind of knocked him into the air. So it kind of made him fly into the air, but he stopped midair into the Jesus pose.
Yeah.
And then they see him kind of slowly get sucked into this UFO, and then they all run at that point.
Oh yeah, no,
they literally thought he died, because it almost seemed like he got vaporized too as he's going up.
Yeah.
So they all run back to the car. I don't know. Did they report it?
So they go back to their hotel, and then they report it to the police, because it's like you really have no other option, because it's going to be suspicious, and if you try and hide it, you're just making yourself look like the criminal. So they do go and report it. It's their best bet.
Now, this is the biggest thing for these guys. Go down to the police station, because when someone goes missing and it's an alien abduction and it's a group of people, it's thought that they killed them.
Yeah.
So they take a lie detector test. Almost none of them pass in line. There's only one that became inconclusive, and that could have just been because he's shaken up because he literally just saw a UFO.
Yeah, no.
But not a single one shows that they were lying.
Yeah, they all passed their lie detector tests, besides the one who was inconclusive.
So 5 weeks goes on, no sighting of Travis, nothing's happened, and then obviously Travis finally comes back to, I think, kind of close to where he was abducted, but not exactly.
I think it's a couple hours away. He pops back up, and he's at like a random payphone.
I don't even think he's at a payphone. I think he's in like kind of near a field.
Well, yeah, but he makes his way to a payphone.
He gets either walks or hitchhikes to the payphone, calls up, and everyone's kind of like, "What the hell? He's still alive?" So then he goes to the police station. He gets lie detector tested, passes, or doesn't pass, but fails that he's lying.
Yeah, so he passes.
It's like the biggest thing of none of them like failed at all. So. He explains that what happened with him is that he got beamed up to it, and then they put him into kind of like a gurney, and then brought him into some lab, and they put a gas mask on his face, and then he doesn't remember anything until he gets beamed down 5 weeks later. And for him, he said that it felt more like, what? I think 5 days is what he said. He said 5 days.
Yeah,
everyone's
it
like,
wasn't
gone
very
for 5
long
weeks.
compared to what it felt like.
So he thought it was 5 days. Turns out it was actually 5 weeks. But obviously he was getting experimented on. So this is just like one of the bigger ones because 6 of them are there. 1 goes missing. None of them fail the lie detector test. Only 1 becomes inconclusive. And then the guy comes back.
Yeah, no, it's one of the strangest ones. It's one that I've always believed because he did the circuit on TV and stuff. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, his story never really changes. He sounds super genuine.
That's another thing. So, the only one that failed was on the TV show.
Yeah, he did fail 1 lie detector.
But that could have just been because the TV show is like, oh, we're going to try and do something crazy and say that it's not real.
Yeah.
But...
Well, and then you also have to keep in mind lie detector tests. Right. I'm saying true neutral when I say this. And that's why I don't always lean on it as evidence. But they aren't, like, 100% accurate. That's why you can't use lie detector tests in court. And they're mainly kind of like an intimidation tactic on behalf of the police. Yeah. But also you still got to kind of give it some leeway. But do keep that in mind when we talk about all this. But no, that's definitely a crazy fucking case, and there's so many factors to it that can lean you into believing.
Just a overall kind of second biggest case, kind of mind-blowing.
Easily. I got one more about some more sexy alien fun time.
Do you want to go over that before I go over this last story I have?
Yeah, let me throw one in the middle real quick. This is the Meng... I'm going to try and pronounce the last part of this incident name, because it's also the main protagonist in the story. This is his name. Meng Zhaoguo. This takes place in China. It's a Chinese name. I'm not going to be able to pronounce it. But it's the Meng incident. So, in 1994, a man named Meng spotted what he thought was a weather balloon while on a hike with a friend. So he sees this silvery object, and I think he described it when he saw it up close as it kind of looked like a tadpole. Circle and then a tail. Silver. Saw it in the Phoenix Mountain while he was hiking. Him and his hiker buddy go to check it out, then leave. And blah, blah, blah. So after this first sighting, he was harassed by the aliens for the next few months. So he'd be seeing this object following him, seemingly. He'd always see it. He'd see these weird creatures every now and then, aka aliens. So, one night, homie's sleeping in bed with his wife and his family. All of a sudden he wakes up, there's a humanoid woman floating above him. All of a sudden he starts levitating out of bed. And then they get it on. Again. Dude starts begging the alien with his wife sleeping right below him. Savage move, bro. Savage move. And he reports, he's bragging a little bit.
Now, before we continue, was he forced to, or did he just...
It was kind of like he was forced to. He was levitated out of his bed.
Yeah,
but then...
There's some cases like that they are forced to. They're not like Antonio the Savage, where he just goes...
Well, this guy's kind of savage, because maybe he was forced to, but he seemed to like it. Because he bragged about having sex with this alien for 40 minutes, okay? He's like, yeah, we were going at it for a while. My wife was right there. She didn't even notice. Then the alien disappears. Now, the final real reporting from his incident with the aliens before it all stopped was this alien leader dude popped up in the air and said, go, and pointed while he was in bed. Dude gets up, walks outside, goes on board the spaceship, then they take off, and they bring him to the home world. Now, the alien he's talking to is speaking English, which... I guess Ming knows how to speak English too. They don't really clarify that, but he's speaking English. He understands the alien speaking English. And they said their homeworld is Jupiter. After this, he doesn't have any more sightings, but there are, as early as I believe 2012, there was another sighting in the Phoenix Mountains of an alien craft. But yeah, we have another dude just banging aliens out here.
Also, I forgot to put in the Travis Walton thing, just because... I want to put it out there. The aliens that he saw were described as the Nordic.
The Nordic aliens.
And when he described it, that's why he the lie detector test is also big because when he was saying it, he was passing the entire time. There's nothing that changed from his story.
And another thing, obviously, I will leave links to all this stuff so you can find information that we found. There's not too many places you can find information on this story, but if you go to Wikipedia, you go on alien abductions, and you go to where they have links for all their sources, that's where you can find the link to this really big article on the Mang incident. The main article in that is in really broken English. The grammar is not very good. So it was kind of hard finding like specific details on what he talked about when I read through. So there wasn't really a good description of the aliens. But I do believe that the woman alien that he had coitus with had black hair and grayish skin and was human size. Could be a hybrid.
All right. We'll get into one of my final cases, and then I have another whole thing that's a case, but it's more of like his like explanation of after the abduction and what he had to go through. This one is the Hillary Porter encounters. So ever since Hillary was 5, she's always been having encounters with extraterrestrials. These ones were the reptilians. I think this is like kind of the first reports of the reptilian ones too. I don't remember the year exactly. It's just known that she's done it since she was 5, and they also talked to her with telepathy. So she had multiple encounters, and she had to go to the therapist and everything to talk about it. So that's why this one's kind of a bigger one, because it's like the first report of reptilians. There's that one. And also, instead of going straight for publicity and going to like the news with it, she went straight to the like government, to like alien, to the, I don't think military. It's called the Ministry of Defense is where she went. She went straight there. That's also why this one kind of has the credit that it has. Another one I was listening to was a guy's whole experience that he had with it that was like shared over Reddit. So he gets abducted and they do all this stuff to him. He doesn't remember most of it, so he goes to the therapist about it. And the therapist was also abducted before. So they have to go through their stories. He's remembering more. He's getting haunted by it. He's having dreams constantly about it. And then the therapist one day is talking. All of a sudden, she just goes quiet. Completely quiet. Is just staring at him. And then she's talking in this deep toned voice. And her eyes kind of start to glow. And they're talking about to bring her to a certain place. And she will never be, or she won't come back. And so after that, her eyes just go kind of normal, and she's still staring off the space, and she's still staying silent, and she's like in this state of just, there's nothing she could do. She could move, like if you moved her arm, she would move her arm, but she wouldn't respond with anything or do anything like that. And I don't think it was far. I think it was just taking her outside, and then she snapped back.
She just regained her consciousness after she went outside?
Yeah.
Interesting. So they didn't come back for her?
That was kind of like the end of the story, and that was like his big part. It was like, this is what changed my whole thoughts on him. Because he grew up with people believing it, but he never really did. And then he got abducted and had to go through all this shit, and now he's a big believer in it.
Was that your last abduction story?
The rest of the stuff is just like sightings and shit.
Which we'll definitely cover in another episode. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we, I would say, get into thoughts and opinions on alien abductions?
Don't you have another abduction story?
Nope, just the 2 sex ones.
Okay. Yeah, most recent, like, UFO thing, obviously the 2017 stuff. I'm sure there's more, but that's the biggest
there's a lot
one.
that's come out
because
recently.
Once that happened, everyone was like, holy shit, the government just said that aliens are real.
Yeah.
So
there's a big one that just came out recently, but I'm kind of saving that for when we talk about our news report, which by the time we talk about it, it'll kind of be old news, but it wasn't like a big enough story to where everybody knows about it, so it'll still be relevant. But yeah, it's also another government-based one.
I would talk about the Roswell incident, but that's like a whole separate
just a whole episode on its own.
Yeah.
Then I think that brings alien abductions to a close. Stories and whatnot, at least. You want to talk about your opinions and thoughts on alien abductions?
I believe them.
Yeah.
Like, there's some of them that are out there, but I've always believed in aliens. I think I've seen UFOs before. So it's just kind of those things where I just have to believe it. There's no way I can't. They're obviously out there. The fucking universe is infinitely expanding. Yeah. There has to be another source of life out there.
As far as abduction go, you're 100% on board?
I would give it like a good 90.
90?
Yeah.
I have a few problems, mainly with, coincidentally, the two most believable ones. The thing that sketches me about both of them is kind of the same thing, is that some of the main players in these stories are already big alien believers, which there's nothing wrong with that.
Was Travis Walton an alien believer?
Yes, big believer. I'll talk about that one first. Him and his father were both super big into aliens and stuff, which you could take that as, okay, they're believers. He's going to make up this whole story, which you could use it like that, but he also disappeared for a while. Everybody's getting polygraphed, they're passing, whatnot. Same thing with Betty and Barney Hill. Betty was a super big alien believer, like big time, for the time at least. And so it kind of sketches me out. But when you hear Barney talk about it and the sincerity in his voice, that kind of brings me back to the believing it side. But I definitely think with all that, I would still believe it. I would even believe both stories.
The fact with those two are the most believable. It's like Antonio's is kind of like out there for me. That's one of the least believable ones. But Travis Walton's, I know that you shouldn't put too much credit into like
lie detector test.
Yeah, you shouldn't put any credit into those as much. But the fact that all 6 of them either passed or one was inconclusive is just out.
Well, and I think so many people vouching for it too, and them being frantic seeing their friend most likely die, and then they go straight to the police. Like, they don't try and cover it up for a long period of time. They go straight and just say it how it was, and they didn't get charged or anything. And so I think that adds credit to it. My only other problem with the Travis Walton case is that he did the big media circuit with it, to the point where he still goes to all the alien stuff today. They made a movie based on his encounter.
They made another movie I think it's about the Betty and Barney Hill one too.
Yeah. Whenever people do that, it kind of gets me like in the middle, because it's like, oh, maybe they made up the story for publicity. But at the same time, if something like this happened to me, I'd want to get the word out too. And if I could make money off of it, fuck it, I'm going to try and make some money too while I'm doing it. So, I mean, it kind of just depends what you think. But at the end of the day, I kind of view it as the Bigfoot stuff. I don't believe everything I hear, because I think it becomes oversaturated to a point to where a lot of people do seem like they're just making this shit up.
There's like 300 reports in just 1 year. It's way overused. But the stories that you get that are like the most popular, you have to kind of put some credit towards them. Because also the other thing with Betty and Barney Hill, and why I take credit into that one, is that they were also like well respected around their community. And that's also what got their like whole thing put on there, was that they are well respected people.
Well, that, and I put a lot of stock into the star map too. Oh, yeah. Just because at the time, that's not something you could easily find and do yourself. And the fact that researchers had to actually research to find this specific location out there in the galaxy, that adds credibility, in my opinion.
Now, Antonio's, big stretch for me. I can believe it, but it's also just kind of a big stretch with how we've seen most aliens act in people's stories. And then all of a sudden, these ones are kind of being like almost human with them. The alien chicks goes with him and then acts like he was nothing, and that's just like a normal human thing to do sometimes, and then they just show him around.
My other thing is, these are highly advanced races that are traveling across the galaxy. Why would you need to have sex with one human to create offspring? Why not just take what you need from the human so you could create multiple instead of just have sex with them the once and have one offspring? It wouldn't make any statistical sense. And I mean, who wouldn't want to make up a story about fucking an alien and bragging about it?
Yeah. Now, Hillary's, I want to believe it's so bad just because she also didn't go straight to publicity. She went straight to the government about it, and then the government opened up about it. She did hold on to it for a couple years, but I mean, when you're 5 and you're seeing reptilian creatures abduct you, kind of a big thing to want to just keep into
and then you're a child at the same time, so even if you told your story, the likelihood of somebody believing you, especially if this is way back in the day, it's not something that people are going to put any stock into.
The fact that she didn't go to publicity with it kind of just gets the Roger seal of approval from it. So,
on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give Alien Abductions, but on a believability scale?
An 8. You can't believe everything, but when you get to believing it, it's a big thing.
It's hard for me because if we put just aliens in general on a believability scale, I'd probably give it a 10. 100% think there's aliens out there. But then when you get into more specific stuff, that's when the numbers start dropping for me. If you were to say, UFO sightings, I'd probably go with an 8 or 9. If you just talked about encounters with aliens, I'd probably be around an 8. When it comes to abductions, I'm probably going to be around a 7, just because I think they're a little too just fanatical for me, if that's the right word to use. It's just so out there. But a lot of these stories have some good evidence and pieces and things that help sway me to believe.
Now, when I say I believe it, it's because of more of these stories.
Yeah.
I don't believe every story that happens.
No.
It's the believable ones that get me to thinking it's real.
The other thing that kind of drops it for me is this hypnotherapy shit.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, hypnosis isn't really a real thing. It's more of just a suggestive thing. Mm-hmm. So I can't put stock into regressive hypnotherapy. It's like some weird magic shit that's just too far out there for me. But yeah, as far as I go, I think I'm at a 7 with alien abductions.
But aliens in general, believe them any day. Aliens are like one of my favorite subjects. I mean, they're also just my favorite. Sci-fi in general is just my favorite, but you bring in aliens into it. Boom.
Yeah. And it's a cryptid podcast. We'll always talk about cryptids and cryptid-related stuff, but I believe more in aliens than I do cryptids, ironically enough. This isn't aliens versus aliens, but they're more believable.
Good idea for a future episode one day.
Aliens. That would be so
Greys versus Nordics. Who's winning?
Nordics, easily. They clad. No, but I think that brings Alien Abductions to a close today. If you like what you hear, let us know. Maybe we'll talk more about aliens. Guaranteed we will talk more about aliens.
There's so much to talk about that we couldn't even fit in this episode. I literally spent the entire day watching shit and reading shit, and it goes on and on.
Oh yeah, it goes on forever. There's going to be plenty more to talk about, and we will talk a lot more about this stuff. We'll talk about case-specific things, more general things. Aliens are forever.
Oh yeah.
But with that, if you want to reach the show, you can contact us at cryptidversuscryptid@gmail.com. That is
CRYPTIDVS@gmail.com.
And if you want to keep up with the show, you can follow our social media. We really only use Instagram, which is Cryptid versus Cryptid on Instagram.
There's also Twitter. There's also TikTok. Just putting them out there, the same thing, doesn't matter.
Yeah, they're the same handle, I think. I think Twitter might be just Cryptid versus.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. I don't pay attention to that shit.
They're out there. Yeah. Do with what you want with that information.
Follow them if you don't want any posts on your feed from us.
Yeah.
And with that, I think the next episode coming out will hopefully be our Cryptid versus newsletter, pending title. Hopefully that'll come out the Monday after this episode comes out. If not, we're ramping up to Cryptid versus Cryptid Mashup and Rehash episode 4, which should be coming out 2 weeks from this episode's release date.
Guys only had to wait like 6 months for it, but it's finally
here.
Yeah,
pretty much. It'll be 6.5 months. And then after that, we lead into the Cryptid versus Cryptid finale, part 1.
Oh, yay.
So, stay tuned for all that fun stuff. This has been Matt and Roger with Cryptid versus Cryptid, signing off.
Later.
Later.